Hi everybody, welcome to Unit 4. This overview will talk about the assignments in this unit and then some of the key ideas that you're going to be encountering in the unit. First of all, you're going to be reading Chapter 7 and 8. You'll be viewing the videos listed here. The last one, Universal Design for Learning, is actually a website where you'll be reading about Universal Design for Learning. Good way to differentiate within the classroom. You're also going to be doing quiz number 4, which is available now but isn't due till October 22nd. And then you'll have your second discussion circle. Now, this is going to be with the same group that you had for the first discussion circle. And just a couple of things that I wanted to point out based on reading your reflections on the first discussion circle. So be sure that you're starting to find the date for this discussion early, because some groups ran into difficulty with being able to find a date everyone could agree on. So do work on that early, even if the date isn't going to be for even a couple of weeks. That way everybody can get it on their schedule and can definitely be there. Second of all, a couple of people mentioned having some difficulty with the camera freezing on Zoom. That could be because you have a weak Wi-Fi connection. So a couple suggestions. One is you can try wiring in to the internet if you have that available. Another thing that you can do is when your scheduler for your group sets up the Zoom meeting, not only does it give you a link to the meeting, but it also gives you a toll-free phone number. And you might want to share that with everybody in the group because that lets you call into the meeting. You won't be able to see people, but you'll be able to hear people and talk. And that's a good backup alternative in case you're having trouble with the video portion. I do want to thank the people who've given me positive feedback about the discussion circles. I do think it's kind of hard in an online class to get to know people. And so that's one reason why I set up the discussion circles. So you can get to know people. I think it's a fun way to talk about what you're learning in the class rather than just sitting and reading it alone and taking the quiz. So I hope you're finding it enjoyable too. All right, let's talk about some of the key ideas that you're going to be encountering in this chapter. We've been so far been thinking and talking and reading and viewing about differentiation. And I think few people would disagree with the statement that differentiating in the classroom is valuable. What we haven't done yet is talk about what that actually looks like or how to do that. And that's what we're delving into now in chapter 7 and 8. Because it looks different than a traditional classroom where students typically sit in desks and rows, there's very little collaborating, everyone's doing the same work at the same time, there aren't a lot of small group activities, students are all reading the same book at the same time, doing the same math problems, and they're expected to complete those assignments at the same time. A differentiated classroom looks different than that. So if you're working with people who in their mind teaching and learning looks like a traditional classroom, they may see a differentiated classroom and wonder what exactly is going on here. So what we're going to think about in this chapter is how do we explain a differentiated classroom to the people who are involved, to our students, to our colleagues or coworkers, to the other teachers on our grade level team who may be teaching in a more traditional way, to our principal who may be thinking that the teachers are teaching in a more traditional way, or to the parents who may expect school to still look like what it did when they went to school. So some things that might look different in a differentiated classroom. One is the element of time. Because students are working at different levels, some are going to finish before others. And so you have what the textbook calls a ragged time. And so it's thinking about what can you have prepared for students to continue learning if they finish the main activity a bit earlier than some other students, and still keep that quiet learning atmosphere for those who need to concentrate. That takes a lot of planning. There's some suggestions for doing that in chapter 7. You also may notice in a differentiated classroom that students aren't just sitting at their desk. And so in the textbook, it talks about the need for students to have a home base because they may be moving to literacy stations or math stations. They may be going and sitting with a small group on the floor. They may be scooting their chair over to sit by a partner. But it's important that between these activities, students come back to their home base so that you can end one activity, get students calm and settled and ready before starting another activity. Another thing that you will likely see in a differentiated classroom is a teacher giving instructions in several different ways. So it's not enough just to stand at the room and tell student at the front of the room and tell students what to do, because some may not hear you, they may not understand you, so you have to give alternative ways for students to get instructions for activities. So it may be your voice, it may be written on a whiteboard or a digital whiteboard. There may be some kind of images that you use, especially if you have students who are learning English as a second language. Or what we're seeing often happens in classrooms is that teachers are making brief video recordings of their instructions for a project or what students are expected to do at a center so that students can watch the video and gain the information and can come back and watch it again if they still have a question. And that's one reason why I'm asking you to video record yourself several times in this class so you can become comfortable with doing that process, because oftentimes teachers are using those video recordings to help differentiate instructions within their classroom. And then another thing you might notice in a differentiated classroom is that the teacher is moving the students towards being able to work more independently, which frees him or her up to give some of the students who need extra help that extra attention. And it takes a lot to train students to work independently. And so last school year when I was at Ross Elementary, I went out to lots of classrooms. I was picking up library books every day, and I saw an idea that I really liked in a kindergarten classroom where the kindergarten teacher was working with a guided reading group, which would be a differentiated group, at a rainbow-shaped table, and the other students were in other places in the classroom working at center activities during math or reading, whichever subject it was. And so when the teacher was at that table, she put a little plastic tiara on as a signal to the other students who were away from the table that she was not to be disturbed while she had that tiara on. Her whole attention was given to that differentiated group. The other students were to be working at the tasks she had assigned them. If they had a question, she had prepared them by identifying who would be experts in the classroom that could help answer certain kinds of questions. She also had taught them that there are emergency times when she could be interrupted, and she taught students what an emergency truly is for kindergarten students. So that tiara was her signal that students were to be working independently. And I thought that was a really good way for her to keep them focused. Okay, another idea you're going to encounter in this unit is inquiry-based learning. It's in one of the videos that you're watching. And inquiry-based learning really focuses on students asking questions or trying to solve problems using resources such as books, magazines, websites, and real-life experiences like science experiments or growing plants or visiting the zoo, using those experiences to help them answer questions or solve problems. And the great thing about inquiry-based learning is that it can be differentiated based on the students' questions and based on the types of resources that students have access to. I'll talk about that a little more here in just a minute. Sometimes inquiry-based learning is also called project-based, blended, guided inquiry, or problem-based learning. All of those have a little bit different definition, but for our purposes, we're going to kind of lump them together in inquiry-based learning. Now, this is a topic that's really interesting to me. When my son was 4 or 5, he was reading on the Legos website. And mind you, this was like, I don't know, 18 years ago, long time ago. And I was fascinated with how he could navigate that website. And I was thinking about what the reading skills are that he's going to need to be able to access information in his future. And that got me started on a professional career path that has gone on for 18 years. I'm interested in the ways children read on the internet and how it's similar and different than how we read print books. And so that led to my research, led to my professional writing, and then it led to this book that I wrote with my colleague, Maya Eagleton, really focusing on inquiry-based learning, specifically using the internet as a resource and what kinds of skills students need to be successful with reading on the internet. And that's a great opportunity for differentiation because often information presented on the internet is posted in a variety of formats. So it might be a video, might be an article. When you go to the inquiry-based link for our assignment, for your things to view, you'll see there's a video and there's an article. Similar information presented in two different ways. So the internet provides lots of opportunities for differentiation. Now, I've continued this interest to a project I'm working on right now. I'm taking the experiences I gained from Ross Elementary working as a librarian, teaching inquiry-based skills to students, and working with a first grade teacher from New York and a researcher from Connecticut. And we're now writing a book that explains ways teachers can set up their classroom and plan for personal digital inquiry. Personal meaning that students are asking their own personal questions about what's important to them in their world around them. Digital meaning we're using digital tools to get the information but also to create. And then inquiry is asking those questions. So for instance, my colleague Karen teaches first grade, and she does a unit with her students on the life cycle of a plant. And so she presented a seed, and she used that to trigger questions students would have. And from those wonderings, then she moved into having them planting seeds, and eventually they planted a garden at the school. And through that, they wondered other things like the size of the stalk for different plants, or the size of the leaves, or which plants have a flower where the fruit or vegetable is going to be. And the students work together to grow that garden and to research the information. So that's the collaborate and discuss. And then the create and take action is that they created projects to share with their families and with other students at the school of what they have learned about the life cycle of a plant. And then they analyzed and reflected on that learning using a screencasting tool or writing in a journal. And so we're really focusing on describing this process at different grade levels and what it takes for a teacher to implement this in their classroom. So inquiry-based learning is a great way to really get at what students are interested in learning and providing them resources that are at their level. And so I want to share with you one resource that I really like to use, and that is Newsela.com. It is a source that provides articles for students, and you can differentiate the level of the article. So you can select the grade level that you want the article to be at. You can match the article to different standards in the Common Core State Standards. And then you can identify articles that have certain vocabulary words. So it's a great resource for helping students find text that matches their level. So let me show you here an example, hopefully. Here we go. So you can see there's that vocabulary underlined. You see the text. The text is available in Spanish also. This right here is called a Lexile level. And as the numbers get higher, the text gets more challenging. So right now, well, let's look. Here's what the text looks like if we have it at the lowest Lexile level. Sentences are shorter. There's less text there. The vocabulary is a little bit less challenging. Let's say we want to bump this article up to the highest Lexile level. Okay, right here we're differentiating. We're making the same information available to students at different levels. Now we have a little bit longer text. We have a little bit more more challenging vocabulary. And so that's one of the benefits of inquiry-based learning, although you don't have to use inquiry to use a website like this, but you can find resources at various levels that meet the needs of students, and really that's what differentiating is all about. Thanks.